Have you ever felt like you've lost yourself by trying to please others? In a world filled with constant expectations, it's easy to betray our true selves just to fit in, to be accepted, or to avoid conflict. But as the Stoics taught, there's immense power in staying true to who you are, no matter what. Today, we'll explore why you should never betray yourself for the approval of others, and how Stoic wisdom can guide us on this journey. One of the core teachings of Stoic philosophy is the importance of living according to one's true nature. In a world that often expects us to mold ourselves to fit different roles, Stoicism reminds us to resist these pressures and instead focus on our authentic self. Authenticity, being true to oneself, lies at the heart of Stoic wisdom. According to the Stoics, living authentically is not only about self-respect, but also about achieving true happiness and inner freedom. Imagine how liberating it would be if you could live every moment, every interaction, in complete alignment with who you truly are. Yet, for most people, this is easier said than done. They spend a great deal of time and energy trying to meet others' expectations, seeking approval, or conforming to societal norms. In doing so, they drift away from their true self, often without realizing it. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, one of the most renowned Stoic philosophers, faced a constant battle with the pressures of leadership, public opinion, and political expectations. He led an entire empire, shouldered the weight of countless responsibilities, and dealt with critics, advisors, and enemies daily. Yet, despite these external demands, he consistently reminded himself to be true to his own nature. Marcus believed that each of us has an inner compass, a set of virtues, beliefs, and values that guide us. When we live according to these principles, we are in harmony with ourselves. When we betray them, we lose our way. Visual. A scene depicting Marcus Aurelius in contemplation, perhaps writing in his journal, reflecting on his inner values amidst the turmoil of Roman politics. Marcus Aurelius often recorded his reflections in his journal, which would later become known as Meditations. This book was not intended for publication. It was a private tool for self-reflection. He wrote in these pages to remind himself of the importance of remaining true to his values, of not letting the voices of others cloud his judgment. For him, being true to oneself wasn't just a personal choice. It was a matter of living with integrity, a life in harmony with reason and virtue. In one of his famous passages, Marcus wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be one." This simple statement is a powerful reminder. Instead of seeking validation from others or allowing them to dictate who you should be, focus on living authentically. You define who you are by your own principles, not by the opinions of others. Authenticity for the Stoics was rooted in the concept of logos, or rational order, which they believed permeates the universe. They taught that each person has a unique role or nature, and our task in life is to discover it, to align ourselves with it, and to live it fully. This alignment is where our true purpose and fulfillment lie. Seneca, another Stoic philosopher, said, "It is not because things are difficult that we do not dare, it is because we do not dare that things are difficult." This quote speaks to the courage required to live authentically. Sometimes being true to ourselves means making difficult choices, standing firm in our beliefs, and going against the grain. Visual. People making challenging but authentic choices. Someone turning down an opportunity that conflicts with their values. Another person asserting their boundaries in a social setting. Someone else standing up for a personal belief. When we choose authenticity, we make a powerful commitment to self-respect. Think about the times when you've gone against your inner values to please someone else. How did it feel? Most likely you felt a sense of unease, maybe even guilt or frustration. Every time you betray yourself in this way, you drift further from your own identity. This is why the Stoics held authenticity in such high regard. Living out of alignment with your true self leads to inner conflict, and ultimately it erodes your sense of self-worth. However, the Stoics also understood that authenticity doesn't mean stubbornly rejecting others' perspectives or refusing to compromise. Instead, it's about honoring your deepest values, even when circumstances are challenging. It's about making choices that reflect who you are, not who others want you to be. Let's take a closer look at the concept of self-betrayal and the cost it has on our lives. Imagine you're in a situation where a friend asks you to do something that conflicts with your values. Perhaps it's something minor, but it goes against your sense of integrity. In that moment, you have a choice. You can either stay true to yourself or ignore your values to avoid disappointing your friend. When you choose the latter, you're creating a pattern of self-betrayal. Over time, these small acts of compromise build up, leading you further away from your authentic self. You may begin to feel like you're living a double life, a life where you're constantly putting on a mask to please others. Visual. A person wearing different masks in various social settings, symbolizing self-betrayal. Now the question is, how can we stop betraying ourselves? How can we embrace our authentic selves in a world that often encourages conformity? The Stoics would advise us to start by knowing ourselves. Self-awareness is the foundation of authenticity. As Epictetus, another great Stoic philosopher, put it, know first who you are, and then adorn yourself accordingly. Begin by examining your values, your strengths, and your beliefs. Ask yourself, what do I stand for? What am I willing to defend, even if it costs me approval from others? Self-awareness allows us to understand what truly matters to us, and it gives us the clarity to act in alignment with our values. But remember, authenticity doesn't require us to be perfect. It's about being honest with ourselves, accepting our flaws, and showing up as our true selves, even when it's uncomfortable. Living authentically is a journey, not a destination. The Stoics believed that this journey is one of life's highest purposes. When you embrace your true self, you become stronger, more resilient, and more at peace. You no longer rely on others to define you because you are grounded in your own values. As you walk this path, you'll likely face challenges. You may disappoint others. You may even lose relationships. But what you gain in return is worth far more: inner peace, self-respect, and the freedom to live your life as you see fit. Visual. A person standing alone, looking content and at peace with a serene landscape behind them. Ultimately, choosing authenticity means choosing yourself over the fleeting approval of others. It's an act of self-love, a declaration that your happiness, your values, and your well-being matter. The Stoics knew that a life of authenticity is a life well lived, free from the chains of others' expectations. So, let Marcus Aurelius's words guide you. Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. This is your journey. Make it yours by staying true to yourself. Think about the times when you've gone against your own beliefs just to keep the peace or to make someone else happy. Perhaps it felt like a small act of kindness or compromise at the time, something you could brush off as no big deal. But even these seemingly minor acts of self-betrayal add up. Each time you set aside what you know to be right in your heart, you lose a bit of yourself. You chip away at your identity, your principles, and ultimately your own happiness. The Stoics understood that compromising our core beliefs, even in small ways, creates inner conflict and erodes our self-respect. When you compromise who you are, it's as if you're planting seeds of regret within yourself. The initial act might seem harmless, but eventually you begin to feel hollow, like you're living someone else's life. You may even start to feel resentment, not only toward others, but toward yourself for not standing firm. And this resentment creates distance between you and your authentic self. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus captured this wisdom succinctly when he said, "Know first who you are, and then adorn yourself accordingly." This is more than just a reminder to live by our values. It's an invitation to understand what truly matters to us. According to Stoic thought, when we stray from our core beliefs, we lose touch with the very foundation of our identity. Visual: scenes of a person in various social situations, hesitating, struggling, torn between pleasing others and staying true to themselves. Think about the cost of this kind of self-betrayal. Every time you ignore your own principles to fit in or to make others comfortable, you create an internal conflict. It might be easy to brush aside a few small sacrifices here and there, but over time, you start to feel a growing sense of dissatisfaction. You may not be able to pinpoint it at first, but deep down, it's the pain of not honoring your own values. This is where Stoicism provides guidance. It teaches us that peace and contentment come from living a life of integrity, rooted in our principles. But how do you truly know who you are? This process starts with introspection, a journey inward to explore your beliefs, values, and priorities. For Epictetus and the Stoics, the answer lay in self-knowledge. Only by understanding what you stand for can you live a life in alignment with those principles. This is why Epictetus emphasized knowing oneself before all else. To live an authentic life means you're not just going along with the crowd. Instead, you're making conscious decisions based on what you believe to be right, regardless of outside pressures. The price of not knowing oneself is high. Imagine constantly trying to meet others' expectations without any regard for your own values. You become reactive, bending to the whims of others, losing your voice and sense of purpose in the process. For the Stoics, this was a path to misery, not freedom. When you live according to others' standards, you are essentially giving them control over your life. Your choices are no longer your own. They're shaped by what you think will make others happy or gain their approval. But what happens to your own happiness in the process? You may find yourself achieving what you thought was success, others' approval, fitting into certain groups, or making others happy. Yet, there's an emptiness in this kind of achievement because it doesn't come from a place of authenticity. It's like building a house on someone else's land, following someone else's blueprint. You don't really own the life you're living because it's based on external validation, not internal alignment. Visual: a person in deep thought, looking at themselves in a mirror, questioning their choices, feeling distant from their own reflection. At its core, Stoicism teaches that happiness is found within, not through external validation. The more you look outward for fulfillment, the further you drift from peace. Self-betrayal, in this sense, is a kind of voluntary imprisonment. You're locking yourself into a life that isn't really yours. Marcus Aurelius, another Stoic philosopher, once said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." Each time you betray your beliefs, you're choosing to dye your soul in a way that doesn't reflect who you truly are. Eventually, you may look back and wonder how you became someone you don't recognize. But let's consider the alternative. What happens when you choose authenticity? When you start living according to your own values, your life becomes simpler, more peaceful. You're no longer caught in the exhausting game of trying to please everyone. You begin to realize that true self-respect comes from standing firm in who you are, even when it means disappointing others. The Stoics taught that it's better to have a few meaningful relationships based on mutual respect than a crowd of superficial connections based on compromise and people-pleasing. Think about a time when you stood up for yourself, despite the risk of disappointing others. Remember how empowering that felt. You may have faced backlash or criticism, but there was a quiet strength in knowing you were true to yourself. This feeling of empowerment and inner peace is precisely what the Stoics aimed for. For them, a life well lived was a life rooted in integrity. They understood that people who honor their values, no matter the cost, are the freest of all. Visual images of historical Stoic figures like Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus, each depicted as strong, resolute, and at peace. Choosing to be true to yourself is not always easy. The Stoics recognized that society is filled with people who will try to influence your beliefs, often with good intentions. But the challenge is to discern which voices to listen to. Seneca, another Stoic philosopher, advised, "Associate with people who are likely to improve you." This means choosing to surround yourself with people who respect your values, rather than those who constantly push you to compromise them. This is where inner discipline comes in. It's about choosing to walk a path that aligns with who you are, even if it's a lonely one. The Stoics were aware of the pressures of society, yet they argued that true strength comes from within. When you anchor yourself in your own values, you become resilient. You're less likely to be swayed by others because you know your worth doesn't depend on their approval. Visual. People making choices that align with their values. Someone standing up for themselves in a workplace. Another person declining peer pressure in a social setting. Choosing authenticity is an act of courage. It's choosing discomfort over comfort, integrity over convenience. Every time you act in alignment with your beliefs, you reinforce a habit of self-respect. The Stoics saw this process as essential to living a life of wisdom. To them, wisdom wasn't just knowledge, it was the ability to act according to one's principles. By being true to ourselves, we cultivate the wisdom that leads to genuine fulfillment. So how can you start living authentically? Begin by asking yourself, what do I stand for? What values am I unwilling to compromise? Then, reflect on the areas of your life where you've been compromising. Consider how these choices have impacted your sense of self and well-being. The path to authenticity may require tough decisions, but each one brings you closer to a life of peace and fulfillment. Epictetus reminds us that we are responsible for our own lives. No one else can live our life for us, nor should they dictate how we should live it. To betray yourself for others is to throw away this gift of life. But when you live according to your true nature, every choice becomes meaningful. You'll find that the peace you've been searching for has always been within you, waiting for you to embrace it. So how can we stop betraying ourselves? In a world filled with pressure to conform, it's all too easy to fall into the habit of putting others' expectations above our own. We want to be liked, respected, and validated, and we may believe that the way to get there is by pleasing others. But according to the Stoics, this path leads us away from freedom and inner peace. To live authentically, we need to shift our focus from what's outside our control, such as others' opinions, to what's within our power, our own thoughts, actions, and reactions. The Stoics teach that true freedom is found in aligning with our values, not in seeking approval from others. Visual. A person standing alone, reflecting, while groups of people around them are chatting and looking over. Imagine how much of our time and energy we waste trying to control what others think of us. Whether it's seeking compliments, hiding our true selves, or downplaying our values to fit in, this endless pursuit of approval leaves us feeling empty and unfulfilled. Stoicism offers a different approach. Instead of craving validation from others, it encourages us to focus on our own principles. When we anchor ourselves in our values, we find a stable sense of self that doesn't waver with the changing tides of others' opinions. The Stoics teach that we can only control what is within our power, our choices, actions, and beliefs. This doesn't mean ignoring others entirely. Rather, it's about understanding that their thoughts are beyond our control. Craving approval is like chasing shadows. It's an endless task because people's opinions change, often for reasons beyond our understanding. No matter what we do, we can't control how others will react. The Stoic solution. Focus on what you can control, your commitment to living authentically according to your values. But why do we crave approval so intensely? For many of us, it's rooted in a desire for security. We may feel that if others accept us, we're safe, that we're somehow better or more worthy. The Stoics understood that this craving for approval is a kind of poverty, a need that we allow to control us. Seneca captured this wisdom in his words, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, who is poor." Craving validation from others puts us in a position of lack, always feeling that we're not enough unless someone else says so. It's like placing our worth in someone else's hands, allowing them to dictate how we see ourselves. Visual. Scenes of someone constantly checking their phone, looking for likes, comments, or signs of approval. Think about how this craving for approval affects your daily life. How often have you caught yourself doing something just because you thought it would make someone else like you? Perhaps you held back from sharing an idea or agreed with someone's opinion to avoid conflict, even when you didn't truly believe it. Over time, these small compromises add up, creating a gap between who you are and how you live. When you betray your own beliefs, you're essentially telling yourself that others' opinions are more important than your own values. And that's a dangerous message to internalize. The Stoics warn us of the mental trap of external validation. Each time we put others' approval above our principles, we reinforce a habit of self-betrayal. This habit, in turn, makes it harder to trust ourselves, as we're always second-guessing our decisions based on what others might think. Imagine living your life in such a way that you're constantly adjusting who you are to meet others' expectations. Eventually, you lose sight of your own identity. According to the Stoics, this is the opposite of freedom. Visual. The image shifts to a person meditating in a calm setting, as if they are finding peace within themselves. Now imagine choosing a different path, a path rooted in your values rather than in the opinions of others. Picture yourself waking up each day and committing to live in a way that aligns with what you believe is right. When you make this shift, you're no longer a prisoner to other people's expectations. Instead, you're free to live a life of integrity, one that doesn't depend on the changing opinions of those around you. The Stoics call this inner freedom, and they consider it one of the highest achievements a person can attain. But how do you get there? Start by reminding yourself that only you live with the consequences of your choices. Others may judge, criticize, or approve, but at the end of the day, it's you who has to face yourself. When you make decisions based on what others want, you may receive temporary approval, but you lose long-term respect for yourself. Authenticity, as the Stoics teach, means living in a way that allows you to look back on your choices without regret. This process isn't easy. It requires courage and a commitment to your own growth. When you decide to live authentically, you'll likely face resistance, both from others and from your own mind. People around you might not understand, and you may feel tempted to go back to seeking approval. But remember, this journey is about progress, not perfection. Each small step you take toward self-alignment strengthens your inner freedom. To reinforce this commitment, practice reflecting on your values. What matters most to you? What principles guide your life? For the Stoics, this practice was central. Marcus Aurelius, for instance, wrote regularly in his journal to remind himself of his values and to keep his focus on what truly mattered. This simple habit of reflection helps you stay grounded in who you are, making it easier to resist the urge to please others. Visual. The narrator reflects on Stoic figures like Marcus Aurelius writing in his journal with serene music in the background. Consider making reflection a part of your daily routine. Each morning, remind yourself of the values you wish to embody, and each evening, reflect on whether you honored them. This practice builds inner clarity, making it easier to spot when you're drifting into self-betrayal. Remember, the goal isn't to be perfect, it's to be conscious of when and why you act. By reflecting daily, you train your mind to focus on what's truly within your control. Living authentically also means being prepared to face discomfort. There will be moments when standing by your principles feels challenging, when others pressure you to conform, or when you fear judgment. But the Stoics teach that courage is essential for a fulfilling life. They remind us that we should be willing to endure discomfort if it means staying true to ourselves. This doesn't mean being rigid or ignoring others. It means that while you remain open to learning and growing, you won't sacrifice your integrity for approval. Visual. Scenes of someone confidently walking away from a situation that doesn't align with their values. As you strengthen this commitment, you'll notice a new kind of peace, a sense of wholeness that comes from living in alignment with your own values. This inner peace is the opposite of the anxiety that comes with constantly seeking validation. According to the Stoics, inner peace is a natural outcome of living a life of integrity. When you no longer crave approval, you're free to live according to your own principles, which brings a profound sense of contentment. In the end, the Stoics remind us that we all have the power to choose. We can choose to let others' opinions dictate our actions, or we can choose to live in a way that honors our own values. As Epictetus said, we should always be asking ourselves, is this something that is or is not in my control? Approval from others is not in our control, but our commitment to our values is. Visual. A person reflecting in a peaceful, open landscape, finally feeling at ease. So choose freedom. Free yourself from the endless need to please others and embrace the authenticity that the Stoics valued so deeply. Each time you act according to your own values, you're strengthening your sense of self, creating a life that is truly yours. This journey may not be easy, but it's deeply rewarding. By living authentically, you not only gain self-respect, you gain the inner freedom that the Stoics believed was essential for a life well lived.